What do you add? It's Paul from Wicked Acorn. We can't waste any time today. We've got a lot of things to look at today. Well, we don't have a lot of things to look at. We have a long thing to look at. Uh, let's look at our photo of the day from the last live stream. It is right here. There we go. There's our man Salix, say cheese. So our last photo, nobody got it, and it's not surprising because it's a very obscure kind of photo. It is a very difficult photo to get if you don't know where it is. But yes, it's a hand with acorns in it. And as I said, we can't waste a lot of time. We got to get right to it. It is this statue in Liverpool, and that is acorns in John Lennon's hand. And each one of the Beatles in the statue have a little secret. And the secret in John Lennon and the John Lennon statue is the acorns in his hand. I won't tell you what the rest are. We'll leave that for another adventure. But yeah, some wicked acorns in John Lennon's hand in Liverpool. And that's where we're going today. We're going to Liverpool. But before we go to Liverpool, we'll see where we're going tomorrow. So can you name that place? Where is this place? So we'll come back to that one. I'll show you it again at the end. And we'll see if anybody can identify where this photo is. And no cheating, no using Google Lens. Somebody left a comment on the video last time that they couldn't even cheat and find it on Google Lens. That's pretty amazing though, isn't it? That you can upload a photo to Google and it can identify the photo anyway and tell you where the photo is from. And usually with that, there's something telling you where the photo is or what it is of or whatever the case may be. But we can't waste a lot of time because we got a long video to look at today. So today in history, 15th of September. What happened today in history? Something related to Liverpool and Manchester, of course. On this day in history, on the 15th of September 1830, the Liverpool Manchester Railway opened with termini, I guess that's the plural of terminus or terminal, at Manchester, Liverpool Road, now part of the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester, and Liverpool Crown Street. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a silent movie from 1923, a Buster Keaton movie. And he made a replica of Rocket. A Rocket is the train you see here in this painting. And Rocket was the first successful train, really, or locomotive. And he made a replica of it for the movie. One other little photo I want to show you, because we were talking about Ina Sharples in the last video, and we were talking about her back on the 1st of September was her birthday. And she was born in 1898. Now, Ina Sharples is the character's name. Her actual name is Violet Helen Carson. And she was born the 1st of September 1898. And she died on Boxing Day, 1983. She was a British actress of radio, stage, and television, and a singer and pianist who had a long and celebrated career as an actress and performer during the early days of BBC Radio, and during the last 2 decades of her life as the matronly Christian widow, town gossip, and elderly battle axe Ina Sharples in the ITV television soap opera Coronation Street. Now, I only bring her up again because in 1913, she became a cinema pianist, providing the musical accompaniment for silent films. As silent films fell out of fashion following the arrival of talkies, Carson took up singing and, of course, later acting. But I actually had to put some music over this because otherwise it would just be dead air throughout the whole thing, wouldn't it? So we'll have a look at our video today. And as I said, it is the movie. Oh, where'd you go? There we go. It is a movie by Buster Keaton, and Rocket, the train, a replica of the train, is a character in the movie. Really, it really is a character in the movie. So let's get it rolling here, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. Actually, I forgot something. There's this I wanted to show you first. A little short I did a couple of years ago, a couple, 3 years ago. And I stopped doing shorts because they were too difficult to do, to trying to jam all this information into 1 minute. But they've since made them longer, so I might start making them again. So I'll just play this one for you. This will tell you a little bit about the Liverpool and Manchester Railway.
September 15th, 1830, Liverpool Road Station opened its doors as the Manchester terminus of the world's first intercity railway line. This railway connected Manchester, the heart of Britain's manufacturing, with Liverpool, a bustling port city that served as the gateway to the world. It was the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, the first to rely exclusively on steam power, the first to carry passengers and goods. Building this ambitious project required the construction of 64 bridges and viaducts, even spanning a 4-mile peat bog. And when it came to locomotives, they held a competition. Robert Stephenson's Rocket emerged as a champion. It revolutionized trade, communication, and even diets. Perishable goods traveled faster and farther. So, next time you hop on a train, remember, it all started here in Manchester, and the world was never the same again. September.
So that's just a little short I made about it. And yeah, you can see Rocket there. There's a couple of shots of Rocket. But he made a very faithful reproduction of Rocket. And I'm going to tell you all about that when we get the video rolling here. So I've got the music music playing there in the background. I didn't want it to be too loud. Uh, so this story, this movie, is all based on the feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys, and that was an actual feud in the United States after the Civil War. And so this is a fictionalized account of the feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys. And what is it he calls them? The McKays and the Canefields or something? This is interesting. This movie is, that's Buster Keaton's son. And this is the only movie where you get 3 generations of Keatons. His son is there, and his father is in the movie as well. So there's 3 generations. So the true life feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys, they're called the Canfields and McKays in the movie here we're watching, is infamous. There's even Bugs Bunny takeoffs on the Hatfields and McCoy feud, and it eventually led to 13 deaths and conviction and imprisonment of several family members. And so Keaton made several changes for comedic purposes, I guess, and to not out the the Hatfields and the McCoys. But they, yeah, it actually took place in the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia. And he changed it to somewhere in the south, and it was part of the plot because the Southern gentleman, you'll see that comes into the story, the Southern gentleman code comes into the story later on. And he also changed it because he loved Rocket, Rocket the train, the engine, and the train in the movie is like an amalgam of 2 trains, a train from an American train and Rocket. And he wanted to use Rocket because it looked funnier. He didn't want to use the American thing. But the interesting thing about this movie is this is 1923, so that's, over 100 years ago. And when he made this movie, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway was about 100 years away from him. So we're as far away from this movie and Buster Keaton as he was from the Rocket story. And it's amazing to think that how time flows like that, isn't it? So this is where the feud picks up, and that must have been pretty freaky for the screen to turn blue. I don't know if that was a regular thing, and I had to add this filter and film scratches and stuff. The film itself is actually in better shape than this, but there was a whole bunch of copyright nonsense which you don't need to know about, but the film is actually in quite good shape. And Charlie Chaplin's film, the what's it called, the Gold Rush or something, the one with the house in it that teeter-totters, that one comes into the public domain this year as well, and they've restored that, and that's going to be re-released this year. So yeah, This turns into a Romeo and Juliet story, of course, and the feud must go on. And the mother, of course, takes the son away to New York. To get away from the feuding. And the Hatfield and McCoy story was more like a Romeo and Juliet story, because Rosanna McCoy and John Hatfield became engaged, and the two families refused to accept their relationship. Unlike the film version, however, their romance was doomed. By the time Jones left Rosanna for her much younger cousin, Rosanna had miscarried their child. 3 of her brothers were dead and several family members were imprisoned. She would die just a few years later at age 30. This infamous and tragic situation became the unexpected backdrop for Keaton's comedy. Buster Keaton had already displayed a morbid sense of humor in his short films. Probably the most brilliant example So yeah, this is apparently this is from an actual painting of Broadway back in the day, based on a painting from Broadway, of Broadway. So he has a lot of family members, a lot of nepotism going on in this film, all his friends and family, but sometimes that's not such a bad thing. So this is called a velocipede, and they made that for the film as well. And it was such a faithful representation of a velocipede that it's in the what's the name of that big fancy museum in the States? They love to talk about. Smithsonian. And the rocket train engine, he lent it to another film after he completed this film, and it got pretty beat up. So nobody knows where it is, if it survived. Nobody's found it. So it doesn't exist, but that bicycle is in the Smithsonian because the set construction guys did such a good job. And those Dutch doors always play in comedies. It doesn't play a role in this one, but it's probably a throwback to one of his earlier films, some gag that he did in an earlier film. So he inherits the old family home, and our story starts to take place. So before this was his first feature film. And before this, like, he just did skits, and he wanted to start making films. The Dream Home. He followed a comedic formula. What's it say here? Yeah, it's hard to believe that somebody we know and love, like Ina Sharples, and played music for silent films. It's amazing to think that we were all here on the planet at the same time. So here we are. Here is Rocket, and Rocket is a character in this film. There's Rocket. It's a very, very faithful reproduction of Rocket, the train, the locomotive that started it all. It's the first successful locomotive. I'm sure that's an inside joke there. But the most important prop, that one that most inspired Keaton to change the setting to before the Civil War, was the train. He spent his early childhood traveling around the country in trains, and they became a big part of his creative life. Once he got into films, so that's his father, that's Buster Keaton's father. He looks a lot like him, actually. They became a big part of his life. Often referred to as an accurate recreation of the first successful locomotive. Buster's train is eventually an amalgam of two famous early steam trains, the British Stephenson Rocket and the first important American passenger train, the DeWitt. So the passenger cars there, which are basically stagecoaches, they're very much like stagecoaches. And you can see they're just like on leather straps for suspension, which of course becomes a gag in the film, bouncing around. Natalie Talmadge is Buster Keaton's wife, his wife in real life, and the sweetheart in this film. So yeah, they're just stagecoach carriages on train wheels, aren't they? So trains were brand new when this started. Well, they were 100 years old by the time Buster Keaton made this movie. So that's a real thing that happens with trains. They're making a big comedic deal of it there, but that does happen with trains banging into each other like that. I remember growing up watching and listening to trains do that when the engine took up the slack in each car. It was like you'd hear knuckles, we call them. We have a different coupling mechanism. And this was a real thing. This was a thing that we did. Well, I didn't do it because I grew up in a railway town, but people would come out and wave at the train as it went by. Even in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up. The whole town comes out to see the train go by. And I'm sure it was a big deal. Onward sped the iron monster towards the Blue Ridge Mountains. George Stephenson was the first to make steam engines feasible. His train, the Rocket, won an 1829 competition, traveling 35 miles in 3 hours and 25 minutes. It became one of the most famous trains in railroad history. Stephenson is now considered the father of steam engine locomotives. And the American one was called the DeWitt. DeWitt Clinton became one of the first passenger trains in America, traveling from Albany to Connecticut, some other place, I don't know that name, in 35 minutes in August of 1831. So there's a little gag here. He puts the top hat on, and they wore white face makeup back in the day, and you can see when he takes his hat off that the hat has rubbed the makeup off his head, off his forehead. They wore really heavy white face paint. And there's his signature hat, of course. Now, the Liverpool-Manchester Railway wasn't this rough, but I'm sure it wasn't as smooth as today's trains for sure. Where is that piece ahead there? So the Liverpool and Manchester Railway was the first intercity railway in the world, and it opened on the 15th of September 1830 between the Lancashire towns of Liverpool and Manchester in England. It was also the first railway to rely exclusively on locomotives driven by steam power, with no horse-drawn traffic permitted at any time. The first to be entirely double track throughout its length, the first to have a true signaling system, the first to be fully timetabled, and the first to carry mail. And trains were hauled by, I was going to say it certainly wasn't that bumpy. There's no way it was that bumpy. That is comedy. But there's an interesting little thing there. You see there's brooms attached on the front. I never noticed that. I've seen Rocket. I think it's in, is it in Leeds now, I think? Anyway, this year the Science and Industry Museum are starting their 5-year countdown to the 100th anniversary. So they're starting a 5-year countdown. Can you believe it? 5 years. Yeah, 5 years from now it'll be 200 years, right? And they're starting a countdown this year. So there'll be events and things, displays and things for sure. The trains were hauled by company steam locomotives between the two towns, though private wagons and carriages were allowed. Cable haulage of freight trains was down the steeply graded 1 26 mile Wapping Tunnel, 1.26 mile Wapping Tunnel to Liverpool docks from Edge Hill Junction. The railway was primarily built to provide faster transport of raw materials, finished goods, and passengers between the port of Liverpool and the cotton mills and factories of Manchester and surrounding towns. Designed and built by George Stephenson, the line was financially successful and influenced the development of railways. Oh, she's off the tracks, is she? So I think there was somebody killed on the first day that the train was in operation. We'll see here in this story I'm reading you. Designed and built by George Stephenson, the line was financially successful and influenced the development of railways across Britain in the 1830s. In 1845, the railway was absorbed by its principal business partner, the Grand Junction Railway, which in turn amalgamated the following year with the London and Birmingham Railway and Manchester and Birmingham Railways to form the London and North Western Railway. During the Industrial Revolution, huge tonnages of raw material were imported through Liverpool and carried to the textile mills near the Pennines, where water and later steam power enabled the production of the finished cloth, much of which was then transported back to Liverpool for export. The existing means of water transport, the Mersey and Irwell navigation, the Bridgewater Canal, and the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, dated from the 18th century, and were felt to be making excessive profits from the cotton trade and throttling the growth of Manchester and other towns. Goods were transported between Liverpool and the factories around Manchester, either by the canals or the poor quality roads. It is, the turnpike between Liverpool and Manchester was described as crooked and rough with an infamous surface. Road accidents were frequent, including wagons and coaches overturning, which made goods traffic problematic. Now, I don't think things happened to that extent, but I'm sure going through a tunnel was not a pleasant experience in an open carriage, which they were, behind a coal-fired engine. The proposed railway was intended to achieve transport of raw materials, finished goods, and passengers between the Port of Liverpool and East Lancashire in the port's hinterland. There was support for the railway from both Liverpool and London, but Manchester was largely indifferent, and opposition came from the canal operators and the two local landowners, the Earl of Derby and the Earl of Sefton, over whose land the railway would cross. Yeah, isn't there a section of it that is below ground level kind of thing, like it's a tunnel but not a tunnel, an open top tunnel, so one of those earls didn't have to look at it crossing his land? The proposed Liverpool and Manchester Railway was to be one of the earliest land-based public transport systems not using animal traction power. Before them, public railways had been horse-drawn, including the Lake Lock Railroad, 1796, and the Surrey Iron Railway, 1801, and the Oystermouth Railway near Swansea, 1807. A cutting, yeah. Hello, Astrax. We are looking at the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. It opened this day in history in 1830, and the engine, locomotive, rocket plays a major role in this 1923 film called what's it called? I've forgotten the name of it. Buster Keaton film. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway Company was founded on the 20th of May 1824. And of course, then there were all kinds of acts to enable it to come into existence. The Stevenson Viaduct. They had to build so much stuff to get the railway across that 35 miles. The first survey was carried out in 1822, and the route was roughly the same as what was built. The survey was presented to Parliament 8th February 1825. And I wanted to show you this photo. I showed you at the beginning. It was, I'll just drag it over here quickly so you can see it. That's the one we saw at the beginning. It's the railway crossing Chat Moss, which was one of the biggest impediments they had to cross. The western end was run by Locke, the middle section by William Alcard, and the eastern section, including Chat Moss, by John Dixon. The 9-arch viaduct. The railway included 4 3/4 mile crossing of Chat Moss. It was found impossible to drain the bog, so the engineers used the design from Robert Stannard, steward for William Roscoe, that used wrought iron rails supported by timber in a herringbone layout. About 70,000 cubic feet of spoil was dropped into the bog. At Blackpool Hole, a contractor tipped soil into the bog for 3 months without finding the bottom. The line was supported by empty tar barrels sealed with clay and laid end to end across the drainage ditches either side of the railway. The railway over the Chat Moss was completed by the end of 1829. On the 28th of December, the rocket traveled over the line carrying 40 passengers and crossed the Moss in 17 minutes, averaging 17 miles per hour. In April the following year, a test train carrying a 45-ton load crossed the Moss at 15 miles per hour without incident. The line now supports 25 times the weight of rocket. The railway needed 64 bridges and viaducts, all built of brick or masonry. That's right, that's what we're talking about. It's important because the cast iron girders became an important structural material for the growing rail network. The railway needed 64 bridges and viaducts, all built from masonry. The cast iron beam girder bridge was built to save headway in the street below. It was designed by William Fairbairn and Eaton Hodgkinson and cast locally at their factory in Ancoats. It is important because cast iron girders became an important structural material for the growing rail network. Although Fairbairn tested the girders before installation, not all were so well designed, and there were many examples of catastrophic failures in the years to come, resulting in the Dee Bridge disaster of 1847 and culminating in the Tay Bridge disaster of 1879. Thank you, Asterix. Yeah, just playing with some different things there to entertain me and you. So those things there, the fence, the sticks, the upright sticks, what do you call those? Do you have a name for those? I'm sure you do, but we have a word we use to call them that a lot of people don't know. A picket fence, right? Everybody calls it a picket fence. We call it a picket fence as well. But we also call those things, the upright sticks, palins. Have you ever heard that word, palins? Not Sarah Palin, but maybe that's where the name comes from. So that's Buster Keaton's wife in real life, and she was pregnant during the filming. I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you were there, Jeff, the picket fence, the things the upright bits we call palins, and it's a word I've used before, and people have said, "What?" But we call them palins. Yeah, his wife was pregnant during the making of this film, and as filming went on, they had to film her in ways to not reveal. You used the word palin, did you? It's a word a lot of people don't know. So his dream home is not what he was hoping for. So this is his first feature film, and there is one famous stunt in this film, but it's not non-stop slapstick humor, which you would associate Buster Keaton with. So here's the Rainhill trials they're talking about here. To determine whether and which locomotives would be suitable in October 1929, the directors organized a public competition known as the Rainhill Trials, which involved a run along a 1-mile stretch of track. 10 locomotives were entered for the trials, but on the day of the competition, only 5 were available to compete. The rocket designed by George Stephenson and his son Robert was the only one to successfully complete the journey and consequently Robert Stevenson and Company were awarded the locomotive contract. It was originally a double track all the way, which is very interesting. Twice the cost, right? A decision had to be made about how far apart the two tracks should be, because there was no standard gauge at the time, of course. It was decided to make the space between the separate tracks the same as the track gauge itself, so that it would be possible to operate trains with unusually wide loads up the middle during quiet times. That's interesting. Didn't know that. That's really interesting. Yeah, so they had two tracks, side by each, side by side, and the space between was the same as the space between the two outer tracks. So it was like three railways in one. If you had an exceptionally large load to carry, you could go down the middle. That's clever thinking. But it means that both tracks can't deviate in elevation, right? Restricting, it was later decided that the tracks were too close together, restricting the widths of the trains, so the gap between track centers was widened. The narrowness of the gap contributed to the first fatality, that of William Huskinson, and also made it dangerous to perform maintenance on one track while trains were operating on the other. Yeah, I suppose it's not a lot of space, is it? What is it, 4 foot 8.5 inches? Not a lot of space to work in with a train roaring by next to you. But it is a good idea until proven otherwise. The line opened on the 15th of September 1830 with termini at Manchester Liverpool Road, now part of the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester. This is interesting. That's a set. This whole thing here is a set. So all those rocks and this, what becomes a river momentarily, but this pond here or whatever is, that's all set construction. Very early set construction. And everything is, I mean, they were coming right from vaudeville, basically. His films were brand new, so they were trying out different things. But it's very much like a stage production. You know, everything is shot straight on most of the time. So this whole thing is a set, and it's absolutely huge. You'll see later as we get into the famous stunt scene later on. It's a little too regular for real rocks, isn't it? But yeah, that's a waterfall they made. They made that waterfall. Pretty incredible, isn't it? So they had huge lots out in the desert where they could just, you know, build whatever they wanted. Oh, the fish pulled them back in. So this is this whole sequence coming up it goes back and forth between location, not this sequence, but the sequence on the river goes back and forth between location and set. It's very, very clever how they did it. Well, it was brand new. That's what's really clever about it. It was brand new. They were the first to do it, going back and forth between set and location. The festivities of the opening day were marred by William Huskinson, the Member of Parliament for Liverpool, was killed. The Southern Line was reserved for the special opening train, drawn by the locomotive Northumbrian, conveying the Duke of Wellington, the Prime Minister, in an ornamental carriage, together with distinguished guests in other carriages. When the train stopped for water at Parkside near Newton-le-Willows, it was intended that the other trains should pass in review on the Northern Line. It was easy for passengers to get down and stretch their legs, despite being instructed not to do so, particularly as there was an interval between the delayed passing trains. Huskinson decided to alight and stroll alongside the train, and on spotting the Duke, decided to start a conversation. The rocket was spotted heading in the opposite direction as people shouted at Huskinson to get back on the train. The Austrian ambassador was pulled back into the carriage, but Huskinson panicked. He tried to climb into the carriage, but grabbed the open door, which swung back, causing him to lose his grip. He fell between the tracks, and the rocket ran over his leg, shattering it. He is reported to have said, "I have met my death, God forgive me." The Northumbrian was detached from the Duke's train and rushed him to Eccles, where he died in the vicarage. Thus he became the world's first widely reported railway passenger fatality. The somewhat subdued party proceeded to Manchester, where the Duke, being deeply unpopular with the weavers and mill workers, they were given a lively reception and returned to Liverpool without alighting. A grand reception and banquet had been prepared for their arrival. The L&MR was successful and popular and reduced journey times between Liverpool and Manchester to 2 hours. Most stagecoach companies operating between the two towns closed shortly after the railway opened, as it was impossible to compete. Within a few weeks of the line opening, it ran its first excursion trains and carried the world's first railway mail carriages. By the summer of 1831, it was carrying special trains to the races. The railway was a financial success, paying investors an average annual dividend of 9.5% over the 15 years of its independent existence, a level of profitability that would never again be attained by a British railway company. The railway was purposefully designed for the benefit of the public, carrying passengers as well as freight. Shares in the company were limited to 10 per person, and profits from these were limited. Although the intention had been to carry goods, the canal companies reduced their prices, leading to a price war between them and the railway. The line did not start carrying goods until December, when the first of some more powerful engines, Planet, was delivered. The line's success in carrying passengers was universally acclaimed. The experience at Rainhill had shown that unprecedented speed could be achieved, and traveling by rail was cheaper and more comfortable than travel by road. The company concentrated on passenger travel, a decision that had repercussions across the country and triggered the railway mania of the 1840s. John B. Jervis of the Delaware and Hudson Railway some years later wrote, "It would be regarded as opening the epoch of railways, which has revolutionized the social and commercial intercourse of the civilized world." I worked on one film. Food in film is an absolute nuisance. And I worked on one film where I had to chip in with the food, with the props. Food was a prop. I think food comes under props. Sometimes it comes under catering and whatnot, but props was taking care of it in this case. And it was a teenager show about and for teenagers. And every episode there was a food fight. It was an absolute nightmare. So you'd have to make multiple, plates of whatever the thing was they were eating. Multiples of it. And it all had to be real food because they're eating it, right? And then you'd have to clean it all up and reset it. Oh, it's a nightmare. And in this one they have children and animals, which they say you should never perform with. The dog is very well trained. I've worked with a few trained animals. Not me personally, but on productions where there were trained animals, and they are very, very, very well trained. It's amazing how well trained some of the animals are. Yeah, so that's part of the reason the film was set before the Civil War. Like I said, it's based on the Hatfield-McCoy feud. But part of the reason for setting it before the American Civil War was that they didn't have repeating shooters. They had flintlocks and single shot guns, which is part of the logic of the story here. The big guy, the Canfield, the head of the Canfield clan, was a vaudeville performer friend of Buster Keaton, and he was in all of his films, and this was his last film. He died before the movie was finished. Apparently he was very ill when they were filming this movie. And he makes it to the end of the movie, but he died before post-production was finished, I guess. 3 weeks before the movie came out. Keep one foot in the house there, Buster. Oh, he's staying. Everything is very straight on, like a theater production, isn't it? The camera is just filming a theater scene, really, isn't it? There's a couple of shots in this that are cinematic, shall we say, but like I said, it was brand new. Film was brand new when this got started, so they were making it up as they went. We'll miss you when you're gone. Where were we? The Rainhill. The line's success in carrying passengers was universally acclaimed. The experience at Rainhill had shown that unprecedented speed could be achieved, and traveling by rail was cheaper and more comfortable than travel by road. At first, trains traveled at 16 miles per hour carrying passengers and 8 miles per hour carrying goods because of the limitations of the track. Drivers could and did travel more quickly but were reprimanded. It was found that excessive speeds forced apart the light rails, which were set onto individual stone blocks without cross ties. In 1837, the original fish belly parallel rail of 50 pounds per yard on sleepers started to be replaced. Yeah, that's part of the gag. He has to reload the weapon every time, right? The railway directors realized that Crown Street was too far away from the centre of Liverpool to be practical and decided in 1831 to construct a new terminus at Lime Street. The tunnel from Edge Hill to Lime Street was completed in January 1835 and opened the following year. Station opened on the 15th of August 1836, before it had been completed. On the 30th of July 1842, work started to extend the line from Ordsall Lane to a new station at Huntsbank in Manchester that also served the Manchester and Leeds Railway. The line opened on the 4th of May 1844. Liverpool Road Station was then used for goods traffic. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway was the first railway to have a system of signalling, and it was never ever standardized throughout the country, the signal system, the initial signaling system. This was undertaken by policemen who were stationed along the line at distances of a mile or less. Initially, these policemen signaled that the line was clear by standing straight with their arms outstretched. If the policeman was not present or was standing at ease, this indicated that there was an obstruction on the line ahead. Gradually, a system of handheld flags was developed, with a red flag being used to stop a train, green indicating that a train should proceed at caution, blue indicating to drivers of baggage trains that there were new wagons for them to take on, and a black flag being used for plate layers to indicate work on the tracks. Any flag waved violently or at night a lamp waved up and down indicated that a train should stop. Until 1844, handbells were used as emergency signals in foggy weather, though in that year small explosive boxes placed on the line began to be used instead. I remember when I was a kid, there was a similar thing. Has he? Yeah, that's great. I think I don't think I've seen that. Oh, yes, I did the one about the tunnel. I've seen that one. The tunnel that pulls the one I was just talking about, that pulled the cars up and down. There was a cable assist. Yeah, there were little, I can't remember what they were called, but it was just a little thing that slipped over the rail, over the track, and there was an explosive charge on the top of it. They were orange with like a metal band, spring band that would clip onto the rail. And when the train ran over it, it was an explosive would set it off and warn the driver that he should stop. Of course, there were many warnings before that, but this was like the last ditch warning. It was a device that was used on the railway. A modern version of what we were just talking about there. And I found one, and there was, because it was our playground, and I guess that's why railways shouldn't be playgrounds. And I didn't know this kid, but there was a kid that struck it with a hammer, and he got all messed up. remember hearing about it. It might be an urban legend, but no doubt it could be true. It was an explosive set off by the weight of the train, and we'd see these things all the time, clipped on the tracks to warn drivers to stop, because we had the biggest yard in the province, and that was our playground. We would go down and play around, run around on boxcars. After the opening of the Warrington and Newton Railway, 4 policemen were placed constantly on duty at Newton Junction, at the potentially dangerous points where the 2 lines met. Initially, a gilt arrow was used to point towards the Warrington to indicate that the points were set in that direction, with a green lamp visible from the L&MR line being used to indicate this at night. Another gag here. This is a gag that's a set, or at least a painting in the background there. And of course, if you can imagine, that's the camera turned on its side. A gag you might have done yourself. The camera is just turned sideways. That's a flat, level surface. But that was a brand new gag back in those days. So you can tell this is a set here. I can tell it's a set. I'm sure most people can tell it's a set nowadays. But back in the day, it was pretty high tech. I mean, that's a big set to construct, all the same. A massive set. And that's probably a real location there. But they're cutting back and forth between sets and location, which was kind of a new thing to be doing. And Newfoundland film industry. We hold several distinctions in the film industry, but back then, I don't know what material they would have used. Probably, I don't know, burlap, canvas, plaster, things like that, over wood. I don't know what they would have used back then. The first film with sound on location was filmed in Newfoundland. And I can't remember the year, but it's early days. It's the first film with sound. And the distinction is, besides that, is the highest fatality ever in film history. To this day, it's the most people killed on a film set. And the film, I think it was called The Viking, and it involved the seal hunt, and they were actually out at the seal hunt, and the ship got stuck in ice. And this was a common thing that really happened to ships in the North Atlantic, of course. And they would use dynamite to free themselves from the ice occasionally. So the ship was carrying the entire crew, the actors, the whole lot. And they all disappeared. There was a huge explosion. Somebody was smoking and apparently set off the dynamite down in the hold that they had stored. There's Rocket again. But it's pretty amazing that they built an actual working locomotive for a film. Now, to get that train to derail right there on command, those kind of things are not as easy as you think to do. But it had to happen right there because that's where the camera was set up, right? But it's a real train. It's an actual real train. Of course, 100 years ago, that technology was still being used. And there she goes. Yeah, that technology was still being used, so there were lots of people that knew how to build steam locomotives back then. Probably wasn't built by film people. It was probably built by some locomotive company. But it was built specifically for this film. There are actual drawings of Stevenson still out there, of course, that they could have gone by, which wouldn't have been as easy to get back then. I mean, now I can bring it up in a second. So this whole gag here is really interesting. As I was telling you, it goes back and forth between set and location. So they constructed a river, and you can tell the difference between the river and the set. So that's the actual river there. But the big giveaway between the river and the set is the speed of the water. And I think that's the actual river there. It's just a different location on the river. So that's real. So his ropes got caught on a rock. But of course it hasn't really. There's some guy off camera holding on to it. And he lets it go. So that's his pregnant wife in real life. She's not showing at that point. This scene here, he almost died in this scene, Buster Keaton. So he had a rope tethered on him, and the rope broke and let go, and boom, off he went. And they found him, a mile downstream. So there's a set. You can tell we're on a set here now. But the rope broke, and he was found face down in the sand, a mile downstream. He almost died. So this is a stunt double. This is not his actual wife. And that's the actual river. There's a set. So yeah, they constructed an actual river. Quite big, quite a big river that they made for this with these rocks. But you'll see the same rocks over and over again as they go along. So that's a stunt double. It's a man in a wig. Of course, get her back on as much as we can. And then we'll see her on the set, because we're not going to put his pregnant wife in the actual raging river. So here we have the set again. So she's in the river now too, but of course any footage of her where you can tell it's actually her, like here, well, that's him, is on the set. That's a waterfall, a set scenic construction waterfall. That's a massive set to build, isn't it? Back in 1923. It is today. Have that much water, that's an incredible amount of water to have at your command. So Buster Keaton, of course, was known for his slapstick stunts. That's a real waterfall. So you cut back and forth between the real and the set. Of course, down below the set waterfall, there aren't rocks and things. Some kind of catchment to collect the water and send it back around, because they are in the middle of the desert. And there's the set and his wife, sweetheart in the movie. So of course he has to rescue her. Now this is an incredible stunt. So I mean, it goes from set to actual waterfall. So they sent the boat over to real waterfall and got footage of it getting smashed up. I was watching a thing about Gilligan's Island a while ago, and they were talking about the lagoon, the famous lagoon on Gilligan's Island, and how disgusting the water was in the lagoon after several years, wasn't it, of that standing water. I'm sure it wasn't very nice. So that's the famous scene you will see Buster Keaton. Of course, that's not a person. Well, it is there, but that's the stunt double. And there she is. So it's pretty good how they were working out this stuff, and they did a good job. They had no script. There was no script whatsoever for this film. They just made it up as they went. Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island was fun, yeah, for sure. That might have been a fun one to work on. I don't know if that would have been a fun one to work on or a nightmare to work on. It's like, what else can we make out of coconuts? Every episode, the professor had to come up with some invention made out of coconuts. So yeah, that's an incredible amount of work. And like I was saying, it was a brand new industry at the time. Scenic carpenters. I guess there were scenic carpenters from the stage, but probably not a lot. I mean, you'd just be making flat backgrounds and flat backdrops and things. So they were really making it up as they went. By this time, they had a few years of filmmaking. So there were techniques that they would, tried and true techniques, but it was still pretty new at this point in 1923. And I don't know if that's an actual effect or something somebody added later, that blue. That probably freaked people out seeing blue color on screen. That's the big scene in the movie. Like I was saying, it's before this. This was his first foray into feature film. Before this, it would just be skits and gags and things. So he really wanted to make a film. So all these people are people he worked with in vaudeville. Not all of them, but most of them. That's a bit long, isn't that that scene? They were really making it up as they went. It's funny when they put the words on screen. Intertitles, I think they're called, not subtitles. Subtitles are underneath the action. Intertitles are what we see in this movie. And so they make up. There you go. There's the end of the feud between the Hatfields and McCoy, or the Canfields and the, what's the other name? Anyway, it's based on the Hatfields and the McCoys. And the Hatfield and McCoy feud did not end this way. The actual feud. There you go. Oh, I got one more. And the happy ending. There you go. I just wanted to show you that because Rocket plays such a big part in the film. And we'll just go back and get a quick look at Rocket before we go. Because today in history, September 15th, 1830, Rocket went into full swing. Full-time job for Rocket. And there it is. I was looking at this afterwards and I was wondering if this is standard gauge railway. I'm thinking it's not. I'm thinking it might be a narrow gauge railway, which of course Rocket wasn't. Rocket was what would become standard gauge. But I think this might be narrow gauge. It looks a little smaller, especially when you see it front on. So there you go. That's the interesting thing about this. As I was saying, it's we are as far away from this movie as he was from the Liverpool and Manchester Railway opening. So that was a long one, wasn't it? But there There you go. That's what trains will do to you. Train spotting does that to you. So I enjoyed that. I hope you did too. And see you tomorrow. Oh, I should show you the photo before we go. The where is it photo one more time. Let's see if you can figure out where it is, because this is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Relate it to this photo. Okay. I should have had that ready, but I didn't. Yeah, so that is our where is it photo for next time. So, can you figure that one out? Well, there you go. That's our film for today. So, we'll see you tomorrow.